Hello and welcome to a step-printed Japanuary special, I guess, doing something a little different today. Here with my good friends Ben and Jack. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, good to see you both. Very excited to talk through some weird and wonderful things we've seen over the years together.
Yeah, so this was Ben's idea. He brought this to me, and of course, if a friend has an idea and they want to do something, I'm like, I'll do anything. Let's make this happen. So he said, let's just get together and chat about some of the many Japanese films we've watched together over the years, since the first Japanuary, I guess, since we met each other. So we're just gonna kind of chill and talk about some movies. I have no real format for this. We'll just kind of hang out and see where it goes.
Absolutely, yeah. Because when was the first Japanuary, Ben? How long has it been at this point? Because it just feels timeless. It feels eternal to me. Like, I can't remember life before Japanuary at this point.
The first one was in 2021. This is the fifth one I've hosted. It feels kind of crazy that it's been that long.
Yeah.
I feel like my concept of time is just destroyed between COVID and everything else that we've experienced in that time range. But yeah, Japanuary has kind of turned into a constant, and surprisingly this has been the one that's taken off the most, and I'm excited and thrilled about that. I'm just happy to share these wild movies with more people.
Yeah, it's really like taken off this year. Like Letterboxd have really latched onto the concept and really pushing it. It's really cool to see, and so many people are getting involved. Way more people are watching and talking about, discussing and sharing Japanese cinema, and it's wild that it started kind of with just watching whatever we could and just talking on Discord, on Twitter or whatever, and now, amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. 5 years. It's a long time to be hosting a challenge like this.
It is. What were you gonna say, Vaughn?
No, go ahead
first. I was gonna say, like, it's just been such a trip looking back at our first diary entries together in Letterboxd. The amount of the sheer range of movies we've seen is mind-blowing to me.
Like, there's a lot of kaiju, like a lot of action stuff, some horror in there, some pinku stuff, some very experimental, sort of like third wave stuff. It's, like, amazing, really, the sort of breadth. And scope from like contemporary stuff back to some classics and everything in between. Really, we've sort of given a go together, and it's really cool to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is quite all over the place. Just looking at like my diary entries for stuff I've watched with you guys, I was kind of surprised. Jack and I watched quite a lot of kaiju stuff together before I started watching stuff with Ben. We went through a whole arc of Gamera and Godzilla stuff. I think over time I watched pretty much every Godzilla movie with at least one of you.
Yeah. I think there was a couple that I had to, just because of time zones and differences in work
schedule,
or whatever.
Sure.
It's very hard to schedule, but we made a good effort of pretty consistently going through majority of the Godzilla films, and it was really, really fun to revisit those.
Yeah. I think like the kaiju journeys we've had together are some of my most fun, for sure. And for me personally, like going into them, I had the highest expectations for the Godzilla films and was most excited about them. And I love a lot of them dearly, but I came out such a Gamera super fan. I mean, that turtle won my heart so fast. And I think about him all the time. I'm always thinking about him.
He's so good. Like, the cultural appreciation of Gamera, I think, has shifted so much since they were released, because they were such kiddie, like Saturday morning adventure films, and like completely rejected by critics and cultural bodies or whatever you want to say. But rewatching them now, and like I do revisit them quite often, either just on my own or with people, and they're just so much fun, and there's such a naivety to them that there's an allure to them that you don't quite get in some of the Godzilla stuff. Not that I'm saying that the Godzilla stuff is not incredible and very entertaining and fun, and there's a childlike wonder to some of them. But the Gamera ones have such a consistently baffling, experimentally childish tone throughout.
Yeah, very much so. He's a friend to all children.
Completely different. Absolutely. So what's everyone's favorite Gamera at this point? Like, we've seen them all pretty much together at this point. What are your highlights? Like, which ones do you think of most when you think of Gamera?
I mean, I always go to Revenge of Iris as the number one. I think it's not just like the best Gamera movie, but I think it's like one of the best kaiju movies in general. Just it's the scope of it is so epic.
It's definitely like the most entertaining, riveting kaiju movie I've watched, like compared to most. I mean, it's at least top 3, like including all kaiju movies I've seen. That goes up there for me. I'd agree with that. I think like if I had a top 3 Gamera movies, Revenge of Iris would be in there. I think going back to the Showa era, I have to put Guiron, but honorable mention to my boy Gauss. I
knew he was going to get the shout out. He has to get the shout out.
And then this is going to be a rogue shout. I think maybe only you guys would agree with me, really, but I love Gamera the Brave.
Me too.
100%. 100%. I think that might be the only Gamera film I have currently as 5 stars, just because like that is like a return to Gamera as like a legacy vehicle. It like reshifts it completely sort of reinterprets it, and it's such a great like kaiju tokusatsu like effect show reel in that. It's got so much heart in it. But yeah, I always go back to the Showa stuff. Like Guiron, as we said, is just completely bonkers and so much fun. Shout out to my man Viras, the little spinning squid guy. Absolutely love him. Is it one of the better films? Probably not, but like him as a concept and as a character design, I absolutely did adore.
I think Viras is the first Japanese movie we watched together.
It is, yeah.
Going way back.
The first, yeah,
so random.
I know
it is. It's not.
Well,
even,
I think
like,
because I had watched the original Gamera on my own, and for some reason I don't remember why I skipped Barugon initially, but I did, and so then we skipped right to Viras, and then I think we watched most of the following ones together.
I'm certain, yeah, like. I can't remember a time I've seen a Gamera film without at least one of you guys involved in some capacity. Because that first Gamera film is very much just a kind of Godzilla clone. Like, they're very much trying to capitalize on that 54 Godzilla. Doesn't really find its own identity until you get into some of those wackier, sillier sequels. And that's when, like, I really start to really love the series.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's even quite a parallel just with Godzilla in general, because Godzilla starts out so serious, and then immediately you have raids again, and it gets goofy pretty quickly, which is kind of the same, because then you go to Barugon, and it's like this weird monster shooting rainbows with ice powers or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's crazy how what was a very poignant anti-war sort of messaging of this apocalyptic monster has become like one of the biggest like franchises on Earth, and people regard it as very silly and like child friendly and all this, that, and the other. But going back to that original Godzilla, like, it's just one of the best movies ever made, full stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, 100% agree. Also, I feel like to like highlight some Godzilla movies we've seen together, I know this is a hot take too, but I think you guys are also on the same page. Ebera.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is
one of my favorites.
Awesome.
That was one I turned around on. Like, I think I went through the entire Godzilla run like a couple of years before I met both of you and got like heavily ingrained in like wider Japanese cinema, and then revisiting a lot of them. I don't know what happened. It just sort of like something clicked for me. Those films start to work even more, and Ebera is definitely one. But first time watching, I was like, whatever, this is nothing. But now going back, I'm like, this is like one of the coolest designs. Like some of those water sequences and those water fights are incredible, and like the Godzilla suits over the years have so many various looks and tactility to them, and the Ebera one is absolutely fantastic.
I think they're definitely jarring if you're like expecting more of what the original film's tone is, and I get why some people are like, what is, like, this doesn't make sense at all to like go back to these goofy ass Showa movies, but I think if you can get on their wavelength, they're so much fun. And like I remember immediately just when Ebera starts and it's like this surf disco dance party, and I'm like, I don't there's no reason for this to be the intro to a Godzilla movie, but I'm all in. Then you've got the lobster monster, and they're just like throwing rocks at each other in the ocean. that's good stuff.
There's like spy hijinks going on.
There is. It's almost like a Scooby-Doo energy.
There's so much stuff happening.
I love the Godzilla films that have just completely pulled from other areas of like genre cinema and merged it into a Godzilla. It's like the spy stuff, like espionage, James Bondy stuff, the more sci-fi like alien invasion stuff from like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster or Invasion of the Astro Monster. It's such a fun, like, Godzilla contains multitudes. He can be many things. You can have films like Godzilla versus Hedorah, a very psychedelic, like, jazz fusion epic.
Which has, like, anime sequences in it.
Oh, yes! Oh, God, I forgot about that. And then, like, Godzilla -1, the most recent one, is just sort of, like, completely spellbinding.
Yup.
Or like Destoroyah, which is like pure horror at certain points. Like that movie is terrifying.
Gosh, it's so good.
The Heisei movies in general, like they kind of up a lot of the production value. I don't know what budgeting was like in that era, but some of those ones like Biollante or whatever it is. Some of the best like practical designs of like a kaiju movie ever.
Oh, just amazing,
Yeah. Well, to go to the opposite end of the spectrum.
Take a left turn.
Oh, take it, Ben. Take us.
Well, staying with kaiju, but we've also expanded outside of these universes, because I feel like those are like the two main, kind of kaiju pools to choose from. But we've seen some other things, like, and I'm going to shout out now, and it's kind of terrible, but I love it. And it's a 5-star movie. Death Kappa.
Death Kappa's great.
Phenomenal. I mean, you have Hideki Anno showing up. I won't spoil anything, but what happens with him is hilarious. You have like almost like a dance battle between kaiju going on. It's just
it's a great movie.
Insane. Yeah, and it has this very like, I don't know, kind of do-it-yourself feel to it, where you can see some of the rough edges and see that, like, this is just a bunch of people that love kaiju movies having fun, and they deliver a fun time with that.
Well, I guess I should. I mean, speaking of like lower budget monster movie stuff, another one of our favorites, Crab Goalkeeper, kind of along those lines.
Yes. What a shout out! Crab Goalkeeper is. That director is unbelievable.
I was gonna say,
I would love to spend a day with him.
I feel like we went through quite a few of his films. I was gonna pull up his name,
Minoru
Kawasaki. Yeah, because we went through quite a few. I think, Ben, you first introduced me to the Calamari Wrestler, which on first watch I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't quite get it. And then I think we rewatched it together, and I just sort of really appreciated his mishmash of tones. Like, some of them are really like strange and kind of serious, but they all have like a light-hearted nature that runs throughout them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people might scoff at, well, this is just like a soap opera with a giant squid, or a soap opera with a giant crab. But I'm like, I'm that easy to please. Like,
if you're listening to this and you think that sounds bad, I don't know what to tell you. Like that's just good movie making. That's just interesting blending of worlds.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we have like toxic relationships. We have corruption.
I know, right?
We have like just a complete lack of ethics in employment spaces, and this calamari guy, this crab guy in the other movie, they have to deal with all that. And so it becomes weirdly moving, but really funny all at the same time. I love those movies.
Wouldn't Air Bud be better if he was trying to help people out of predatory debt scams they'd fallen into? Like,
exactly.
That's Crab Goalkeeper.
That coward is only focused on his sporting career, whereas the Calamari Wrestler, he fights for in the injustices of the world whilst also performing avant-garde sort of sports theater in the ring. It's beautiful. Then you have other films. Oh, go on.
I was gonna say, if soccer doesn't really strike your fancy, or neither does wrestling, you have Executive Koala. If you're just a boring businessman,
exactly what I wanted to mention.
Koala. Exactly. I mean, what a great movie.
like more of a psychological thriller with a man wearing a koala mask for the entire runtime. Again, with that comedic through line, it's just. I definitely need to see more of his films at some point. I think, Ben, you've probably seen a couple more from him. Did you see, like, Monster Seafood Wars? Am I making that up?
That is one that I've been pushing for all of us to see. I think we need to schedule a watch party for that.
Absolutely. It's been far too long.
You have seen one that I have not, the Kaiju Mono.
Kaiju Mono.
I still need to see that.
So this is going to lead into a nice segue here, because this is like the poor man's Big Man Japan for me. Like, it's kind of doing a very gimmicky thing that Big Man Japan, a fantastic movie, is doing, but doesn't quite do it as well. But again, it's been several years now. I have a wider appreciation for this sort of film, and maybe on rewatch, things would work out a bit differently. But Kawasaki also did a sequel to one of my sort of like favorite, underrated, under-talked about kaiju movies, The X from Outer Space.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he did do that.
The Monster X Strike Back, Attack the G8 Summit, which is a bit of like a mouthful to actually say, but that's a fun little political satire against the kaiju backdrop. Some great effects, some very funny sort of characters and cameos in that bad boy. It's so much fun.
Those are always...
The only other one I've seen is Cat Ramen Taishu, which is like a cat puppet that is trying to become... basically like the ultimate ramen chef. It's kind of like Tampopo-esque in that way,
but with a cat?
Except darker and with a cat puppet.
Oh, okay.
I believe, if I remember correctly, he's like trying to become this just successful kind of restaurant owner, and his father is like Iron Chef level cook and just keeps shitting on his cat son.
Oh my god.
It becomes like a battle between those two. So, it has all the bizarreness of his other movies.
That's what you need. Those are the best movies, when it's like low budget and it's just all the like earnest effort and chaos that comes out of that. It's just that's the best kind of stuff that you find. Those little gems.
I feel like we're like in our bizarre movie phase at the beginning, which is actually kind of hilarious.
It's a nice little icebreaker, getting to know each other. Very fun movies, very easy to watch along together. Like we're not watching serious dramas at this point. We're not quite flirting with other genres. We're very much going for either big and brash sandbox movies or very comedic, wacky films.
Right, and so Jack, as we discussed before we started recording, the first thing that we have logged together is None in Rope Hell, and not farther down the road we have the guinea pig movies.
And Ben, please describe to me, what is None in Rope Hell to the gentle listeners at home that may have not experienced such a movie before?
I mean, I feel like everyone already has the impression I'm a simple man, and certain movie titles I find striking, and then I'm curious and I have to know. And so when you stumble across a title just as in your face as None in Rope Hell, I'm gonna have questions and I'm gonna need answers.
And the poster does a lot too. I mean, you see that poster and eyebrows are raised.
Yeah, and so ultimately it's just a pink film, and pink films from Japan, they can be anything, but they have to be kind of raunchy sometimes and have nudity, and that can either be used to great effect to make like some strong political or cultural statement and honestly make you feel gross or depressed, or it can just be batshit insane and like
more often it's
a vehicle for nonsense. And
exactly,
None in Rope Hell fits into the latter category.
It's that wave of like exploitation movies. Like America had its own string of exploitation movies in the 70s and 80s, and the inverse in the sort of Japanese new wave coming off the back of that. You had this whole range of pink cinema. And that was definitely my first pink film. I'll hold my hands up. I haven't really been back to the pink genre in a while, just because it's not something that I'm majorly drawn to these days. But that was an era where I was very much comfortable with what I knew about Japanese cinema. I knew what I liked, and I liked what I knew, and that was an era where I was very much experimenting, reading more, looking through lists, finding stuff like that, and that just opened up so many doors for me.
Yeah, and actually, like, even with you, Vaughn, not necessarily a pink film, but around that same time period, we watched Yakuza Law together from Ishii, who very much like fits into that exploitation category.
Absolutely.
I think both Yakuza Law and shortly after Horrors of Malformed Men, I think just because of when we scheduled stuff and like time zone differences, I watched both of those at like 8 or 9 in the morning, and that was probably ill-advised. It was kind of a weird experience.
Afternoon watches for me. I think your review like states what time of morning you were watching.
I think it does. Let me see.
Like breakfast time, watching some of the like the goopiest, grossest horror effects
9
in a
a.m.
Japanese
on a Saturday
movie ever.
was in my review.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, those, like, the thing is, I will say Ishii, I think, operated maybe at a higher level than a lot of other exploitation directors. But like those films, like Nun and Ropel, they're so crazy because they don't have very many redeemable qualities, but there will always be like at least 5 minutes worth of that movie, like that 90-minute movie, where you're like, that's a ridiculous shot, or like it's something they pulled off kind of blows your mind, and you're like, why did they put the effort and energy into this? And I think like just the sheer kind of like novelty and weirdness of it all is kind of what makes it fun to watch. But like you, Jack, I'll still watch some, but only from particular directors who I'm like, I kind of trust them to do something interesting here. The genre is full of a lot of crap. So
that's the thing. Once you get past the novelty and the shock value of like a surface level reading of a pink film, you really have to sort of like trawl through a lot to find something you can really sink your teeth into, other than just feeling like you're watching just exploitative borderline pornography, which, you know, has its place in the world, but, you know, it's not for everyone, and it's not for all the time.
Exactly.
It is interesting though, because there's a certain like era of filmmakers who, because of when they like entered the film industry and the time that it was, like there's tons of directors who are like very prominent and have gone on to make like a bunch of really high quality, amazing movies, and then you look in their back catalog and it's like their first few movies are like basically just that certain era of like exploitation pink films, and it's like I didn't expect going back to Revenge of Iris, Shisuke Kaneko has several pink films in his catalog. So it's like you go back and it's like, oh, I didn't expect this from this guy.
It's just interesting to see that there was a market, there was a need for them at some era in Japanese cinema history, and there's so many pink films out there. Like there are lists upon lists of these things, and you know, I'm not rushing to get through that list entirely, but you know, it's nice to know it's there.
Yeah, I think what's wild about like pink films is just like a corner of Japanese cinema is that what a pink film actually is has kind of become obscured. I mean, when they were first a thing in the 60s, it was like super low budget. You had to make it in just a couple of weeks. It had to have the nudity and nothing else really mattered. The directors could do what they want. And now, like, then transitioning to the 70s, you have like the Nikatsu Roman pornos, where it's like, we're actually going to put more money and effort into this, but it became sleazier, maybe a little less political because there wasn't as much of that new wave edge. And so like it's this weird genre where like if Sono, for example, and that's not a director we support these days, but like if he made a film that had a lot of nudity in it, a lot of people might lump that in with a pink film. But if it had like millions of dollars worth of a budget or big actors attached, I'm not so sure it is. Like the lines become blurred about what it really what it is.
Yeah, you have that sort of like cutthroat grassroots approach to a lot of Japanese films from the era, but especially that sort of exploitative edge, the exploitation edge, sorry. And those pink films kind of operate best because of the scuzzy, low-quality nature of it. Like, if you inflate that with a bigger budget, I feel like I don't know, it's different, it's completely different. Like, you need something more to sink your teeth into, whereas a Shinsono movie would have those inflated budgets and have elements of it, but also be operating on a different sort of scale. Like anti-porno,
Exactly.
for example, like has something to say, is working towards something rather than just showcasing nudity and extremity for the sake of it.
Yeah, because
Yep,
I believe anti-porno was made under those rules of like how those films were made, but it definitely doesn't come out feeling like one of those. And is
No.
Yeah.
despite him being a terrible person, is a very good movie.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I think what you were saying, Jack, about inflating it does become something else. Like the Wakamatsu films, for example. Like if
Yeah.
we're gonna highlight just interesting directors here, I think that's one worth checking out for most people. Those pink films, or the ones from Sato too, who's made some of the more
yeah.
disturbing and gross ones I've seen.
Yeah,
But-
definitely. I think that was
but
one of the
both
first
of them-
ones we watched together as well.
Do you want to say the title for that one? I'm
I
not
think
so
they've
sure.
I think they've changed the title on Letterboxd because I was just going
it's
through my
Poaching
diary.
by the Water now.
It's
Poaching
poaching,
by
but
the
it was
Water.
what was
wow.
it? Horse,
That
woman,
sounds so
dog?
lovely.
Yeah,
Is it horse
it was,
or dog, horsewoman?
Horsewoman dog.
Horsewoman,
Um,
dog. Sorry, there we go.
But those directors, like most people thinking of pink films, are thinking of exploitation, but they're also thinking kind of really just pornography, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are directors that said, we're gonna take what you think is a sex film and make it the least sexy thing possible. And I
Yeah.
think that is what there is to kind of appreciate in that. They're making more of a statement, and whether you agree with how they execute it or not is up to you. But I would much rather someone at least go out on a limb and try to say something
Yeah.
than just like, here's this naked body here. Which again, a lot of those pig films, that's just what it is. So if you want to check out that genre, please do so. Knowing that we've warned you.
But there's areas of like the sexploitation industry in Japan as well, where there's genuine artistry and there's something within them, like a political sort of messaging and all sorts. I was thinking of Teruo Ishii's Orgies of Edo. We went through an Ishii phase at some point in 2021 at some point, and that one is sort of elevated from the sort of scuzzy sexploitation to having something to say and having those Inferno of Torture or Shogun's Joy of Torture, where you have these seedy, malicious men who genuinely don't get their outcome in most, but get their comeuppance in some of Ishii's movies.
Yeah. I mean, Ishii worked as like an assistant director for forgot if it was like Mizoguchi or something, like one of the all-time
one of
great
the
Japanese
goats, yeah.
directors. And it's just like when you see the movie, he like brings that elegant filmmaking to the most filthy topics possible. And again, there's just something about that. I don't always love his movies, but they make me feel something. I'm never bored, and I think that's a compliment. That's what I look for. I want to feel at the very end that maybe I learned something about myself or I was entertained. To come away with nothing is like the worst feeling from a movie.
Yeah, that's
Whereas,
true.
like the films of Wakamatsu, for example, like we watched Ecstasy of the Angels together, Violated Angels, I think, which again have that sexploitation nastiness to them, but there is a radicalism behind them. There's a poignancy to what they're actually trying to do and trying to say, and the actual form of his films have so much more artistry to me anyway. Like there's so much like free jazz and a very experimental approach to like filmmaking in those.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's see. I was thinking if we, you know what, I'm gonna give a quick shout out to this movie because it's getting like released everywhere, and this is one that we watched together, Vaughn. But Mermaid Legend.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking
Oh,
of like
yes.
revenge films, coming from directors that have worked in the pink film industry, Mermaid Legend is phenomenal. That is one of my favorite movies that like I've got to watch with you guys because it's just insane. Like
It
Jack,
is.
we had to
That
do a
was-
podcast.
I was going to do a little plug there. We covered that a couple
Yeah.
years ago on Adventures Through Asian Cinema, and that was an absolute blast. Like, you aren't prepared for how hard that movie goes. One of the best ending sequences I've seen in a movie.
Yeah,
Oh,
amazing.
love it.
Yeah, and that was one where
Yeah.
I knew nothing about it going in. It was just, another casual invitation from Ben of like, hey, I'm going to watch this. You want to join me? And I'm like, sure, I'll watch this. And totally caught me off guard because it's just like, it's so good. Yeah, that ending sequence is incredible. But like the whole thing is quite beautiful. Like the cinematography is just amazing. Like I'm so excited to have that new restoration. And I know, Ben, you went and saw the new restoration in person, which is very exciting.
I mean, third window films, when it comes to Japanese cinema, they don't often disappoint. They try to find the gems that people haven't always heard of. And I know Radiance is doing really cool things with Japanese cinema right now too. So shout out to both. But like third window films kind of just feels like an OG.
Yeah.
And so for them to be releasing this film, I think is really, really cool. It's great. It deserves to go down as probably one of the best films from the 80s in Japan, without doubt.
Yeah, definitely a favorite of mine. And again, just like totally caught me off guard because I had no idea what to expect from it. And it does, I think, especially at the beginning, it does feel like it has some of that exploitation edge to it. But then it totally kind of morphs into something different by the end. At the end of it almost feels like a Tarantino movie. It's such like a chaotic like bloodbath.
It's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
And I feel like I was going to say, just to finish off on that one, I feel like Mermaid Legend is a film that is able to be better appreciated today because like the themes it's kind of dealing with have only gotten worse since that time in terms of like protecting the environment or like the waters that we get our food from and all of this stuff. Like there's definitely elements of speaking to that in pollution in general. And obviously things have only gotten worse since the 80s, so its message hits harder by the end too, I think.
Let's talk about Takashi Miike, who was a director I was kind of familiar with before meeting you guys. Like I'd seen Audition, and I think with that first Japanuary challenge in 2021, I watched Ichi the Killer for the first time.
Yeah.
And just going through my diary, we've seen quite a few of his. I don't think I've seen many Miike films without one of you present in some capacity.
True, yeah.
Famously, I got incredibly drunk out in
God, that's right.
where I used to live. Came home and we had scheduled a watch party for The Happiness of the Katakuris, a movie I have not revisited yet, but that was genuinely put me in an early grave with how like absolutely bombastic and off the wall that movie is.
Oh my gosh, that was such a good time.
That was a very good time and a great movie. That's still one of my favorite Miike movies is Katakuris because it's just like it's so bonkers.
I need to go back without 14 beers in my system or something. But.
It sounds crazy to be like, well, okay, he has 100 movies, so the statement's not totally true. But in terms of his big films, Katakuris feels like the most accessible option to get a glimpse into his insanity, if that makes any sense.
I do think that makes sense.
If you just take the top 5 popular films on his page, you have Audition, Ichi the Killer, 13 Assassins, Visitor Q, and The Happiness of the Katakuris. So when by comparison, you can say that is the most sort of entry point, accessible point for Miike.
Yeah, take accessible lightly, but like,
accessible by comparison. Yeah.
But I feel like Ichi is an interesting one. It is a quintessential Ben movie, and
Absolutely.
I know both of you didn't love it the first time you watched it. So I'm interested in how you guys look back on that film now, because it's a movie you can't forget once you see it.
That's true.
That's the thing. Like, first time watching it, completely caught off guard. Just had no expectations other than there was going to be some sort of masochist X-rated content in some regard. But the playful, almost like comedic nature of Miike movies sort of really showcases itself in that. Like prior to that, I'd only seen Audition, which is very cutthroat. It is very like dry and just horrific. Whereas Ichi has a more playful streak to it. First time around didn't quite meld with that tone, but rewatching it, and I've been meaning to go back again just because I think I've read the original like manga since, and would love to just see how that holds up against it. But as Miike sort of Yakuza films go, like Ichi is doing something very different and quite strange, which I very much appreciate.
Yeah, I think the first time I watched it was back in that first Japanuary, which I, at the time, didn't have like a huge familiarity with a lot of Japanese cinema. And so like watching that as like an early entry point, I was just kind of like, I didn't know what I was watching. And when you watch a movie and the title card is made out of cum, it's kind of like, I don't know what's going on here.
There you go. Yeah,
and it did at the time.
The
a very
thesis statement front and center.
It did very much feel like this. At the time, I was like, this is just kind of gratuitous violence, and it doesn't seem to have any purpose or any end to it that makes a whole lot of coherent sense to me. And then I think it was about a year later that Ben made us all watch it again for his birthday. And I was like, well, I do want to revisit this, absolutely. And appreciated it a lot more. And I think that time of just being able to familiarize myself more with a lot of different Japanese cinema and just cinema in general, and I came to appreciate it a lot more for what it was. And it has been. I don't think I've seen it since then, so I should go back again.
No, either have I, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it too, just because.
Just because.
I mean, I feel like the first time I watched it, I was an impressionable, probably at the time still a teen, young adult.
Yeah.
And it was so beyond anything that I had ever seen before. And that was even, like you said, Jack, having seen Audition from Mike.
Yeah.
But it was just so, I was like, can movies like this even be made? Like,
is this legal?
It felt like, despite being in like modern times, I was like, I feel like I shouldn't be watching this. And so then to learn so much more about Japanese cinema and all the people involved in the movie, like I don't know how better to describe it, but imagine like, I don't know, some of the biggest actors in the US, maybe ones like in Marvel and DC, all deciding to get together and be in this like nasty comic book, disgusting, depraved thing. Because all the people involved in Ichi are like Sabu is a director.
Yeah.
Tadanobu Asano is now a Golden Globe winner. Tsukamoto is a great director. Like Jun Kunimura has been all over and is fantastic and legendary in his own right. So like all these people, I'm like, how did Mike convince everyone to get on board with this? First of all, and then just to see like, who's the director that directed Raw? What's her name again?
Julia Ducournau.
Julia Ducournau.
Yeah, and then her film that won at Cannes. I felt like there were elements. Yeah, I felt like there were elements of Ichi in terms of like the skewer weapon and just I'm like, it's a film that will live on despite how it's aged. Some people will find it in horrible taste. Some people will see the humor in it, but like again, it's one of those movies that makes you feel something whether you like it or not.
That's very true.
I appreciate that. Like that again, you'll never forget it, and there's like merit to that. There's merit to seeing a movie you'll never forget. And I don't know, everyone really sells it despite how gross it all is. So
and it is gross. Cannot be understated how gross that movie is.
I mean, maybe we could stick with Mike. I think Vaughn, you still need to see the Dead or Alive movies.
I do, yeah.
I need to see the sequel. Ben, we watched the first one together, which I still attest has the greatest opening and closing of a movie I think I've ever seen. Like, I'm not like overly keen on like the rest of the movie. I think it lacks a little bit, but absolutely wild opening and closing, and like I think that's one of the golden rules of cinema. If you can make a movie that the audiences remember the ending of, you've made a great movie. So
that's true.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with Mike is like I think a common criticism is that a lot of his movies kind of drag, that they're often very long and dealing with subject matter that's not pleasant, but he finds a way to like reel it all back in at the end or blow it all up, but maybe that was the answer. And it's like every time he does it, I can't help but smile. I'm like, this man has just been putting out insanity for like 3 decades straight, and he doesn't take a day off. It's like 5 movies a year.
It's absolutely
crazy,
incredible.
Yeah.
Like, Gozu is another one we all watched together.
We did watch Gozu.
Another one with some absolutely unforgettable moments in that movie, sort of etched into my retinas. I'll just say there's a dog
Ben's
sequence.
had Gozu on the mind a lot recently too.
The dog sequence, Jack, is insane.
Genuinely, I when I close my eyes at night to go to sleep, that's all I can see some nights. It's
oh my gosh. And like, well, that leads to the scene that I can now never unsee, and I've been talking to you guys about it nonstop, and it's so stupid. But my girlfriend and I, we've been watching One Tree Hill. Why? Because why not?
Yeah,
And
sure.
just this past New Year's, so right before Japanuary 2025, I'm watching it. It's like 2 a.m. I'm scrolling Wikipedia on the actors, and the main villain in One Tree Hill is he's the father of these 2 sons that have 2 different mothers, and he is the absolute worst. They play basketball. It's like they miss a shot. He's like, "Fuck you guys, you suck." Like it's immediately he's just terrible human being. And I was like, what else has this man been in? I want to know. And lo and behold, 2003, Takashi Miike Gozu. And if you look at the cover, I'm not spoiling anything. Apparently, the man wearing that cow head delivers a disturbing sequence.
So crazy.
Oh my god.
was the lead from One Tree Hill, the evil villain.
How these creatives find each other, I will never know. Was Miike just watching at 2 a.m. New Year's Eve, just watching One Tree Hill, and he was just trying to get some casting decisions sorted, or?
Well, and here's the other thing. After that happened, I had a whole entire existential crisis. I'm like, no way that's that guy. And so I spent another 2 hours. It's almost like 5 a.m. I'm like, can I find anything to confirm that this is true? And I couldn't find anything. But then that's leaving me to think, who went on Wikipedia and chose
just lied about that?
All people. I don't even care if it's true or not now. I have so many questions.
Such a specific edit that it has to be. Truth is stranger than fiction. It must be real.
I'm willing to cross-reference the Gozu credits now, I guess. See if we can find it.
I need Netflix to fund a documentary of me figuring out how this all came to be.
Searching for Gozu Man. We got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many questions.
I feel like it's so unusual when Western actors appear in Japanese movies, and it always stands out. You've got one of my favorites is Vinnie Jones in Survive Style 5.
Oh, of course, yeah, we watched that recently. A double bill with Mean Machine, a Vinnie Jones staple.
Yes,
that's great.
That was a great day.
Yeah, well, Vinnie Jones has such a singular, presence to him that he works quite well in that movie. But it's as you say, Vaughn, they always stand out like a sore thumb in some regard.
Right.
It works in a very strange way.
It does kind of work, especially in that movie. He's such a great character in that movie. Is British hitman coming to Japan.
What is your function?
What is your function in society?
I mean, I feel like, you know what? Now that we've talked about multiple of his movies, and I have to, but I've made you guys watch so many Tadanobu Asano movies that I feel
you have.
As you go,
he's got to be close to your top actors.
He's got to be.
I think he certainly is.
I mean, not for many good movies on my list. No. A lot of bad American stuff. Battleship, baby, Thor.
Listen, Battleship has moments, okay? There are fun moments to be had. That is a terrible movie, though.
In terms of ones we've watched together, Funky Forest. Absolutely wild sort of vignette kaleidoscopic movie.
And that's another film with an Anno cameo as well. He shows up in there.
It is. A really
Anno was
good
the
one, too.
Yeah. Stan Lee of Japanese cinema. Just popping everywhere. But.
Yeah.
I was going to say it.
Man, actually.
It's very,
you go ahead, Vaughn.
It's very on brand because the first Japanese movie that we watched together, Ben, was Focus, which is starring Asano.
Oh, yeah.
A very obscure one. To have started with.
I'm just checking.
You were there. That's a hidden gem.
That is a hidden gem. That's pretty good. I should go back to that.
Yeah, that's one that I've often thought about. I'm like, if I rewatched that, I'd probably easily give that a 4 out of 5 because what it's working with, and it's got a tight runtime, a fascinating concept, and actually Asano does kind of deliver
he does deliver. He's got some chops.
Disturbing performance by the end, where you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
definitely if you, I mean, I haven't watched it, but I've seen reviews, and I don't know if you guys agree. People compare it to like Nightcrawler in terms of like being obsessive.
There's stuff there. Yeah, there's like
yeah.
that sort of Ace in the Hole, Billy Wilder stuff to it as well. But yeah, it's a cool sort of like entry into like the Japanese side of things there.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at for like low budget, like a movie that kind of encapsulates why people like Asano, I think that actually is one to go to. It's like he's got that kind of effortless, cool appeal to him, but then there's this dark, sinister side he can kind of bring out, and he always sells it. So yeah, that was a good gem to bring up. I love Focus.
Yeah, well, I don't even remember how we kind of landed on that as one that we ended up watching together, but it was
almost certainly Ben just diving through Asano's letterbox page.
Yeah, I was just looking. Like, I'm bored. I was like, I'm bored. You guys want to join me for this?
Well, speaking of like Ben bringing Asano to the table, you introduced Electric Dragon, 80,000 volts to me.
That's true.
I think we've watched that together at some point, and you know that's a film that I only sort of appreciate more the more I watch it. It's been a couple years now, but again, like Ichi the Killer, didn't quite understand it the first time round, but then on rewatch just sort of start to sort of soak it in a bit more, and like there's nothing quite like that movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of think of Electric Dragon as like kind of the reason that Ben and I ended up becoming friends, because in that first Japanuary he recommended it to me, and I checked it out, and just immediately I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, and we kind of immediately like bonded over Electric Dragon, which is, yeah, it's such a banger. And at the time, it's kind of weird to think back on it, because when I first watched it, it was only available in like this terrible quality copy that was like uploaded to YouTube, just this awful old rip. And now, like you said, Third Window Films, they restored it, and it looks incredible now. Yeah,
it looks so good. That's just like one of my favorite cult films. I feel like you guys said, the energy in it, some people will describe it as like Tetsuo, and I understand. I understand the comparisons, but like Ishii is the definitively more punk of the two directors. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that like is wielding an electric guitar. I mean, it is true. And he's a reptile investigator. I mean,
there's a lot going on.
None of it makes sense, but like if you get on the wavelength it's on, it is like, it's quite literally electric. It just is a movie you want to inject into your veins. It's like, I could work out to this movie. I could do anything with this movie.
I could do it. It's a very powerful movie.
It's extremely high energy, but it's also pretty easy watch, because it's only about an hour long, I think. And that's I think what like really makes it great and like very punk to me is it's just like short and succinct, and it gets the point across real heavy, and it's great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that is just, again, Asano, his like 90s, early 2000s run is truly insane. I mean, Vaughn, we went through those Aoyama films, the Shinji Aoyama films with Helpless. He's not in Eureka, but there's mention of him, and then Sad Vacation. And I feel like those are like, again, not everyone is familiar with that director, and he sadly passed away, but like, he has his own unique voice, his own style, where if you're watching his film, you know it's him and nothing else feels like it. And like Ishii of Electric Dragon, I think he's a director that like Asano and him understand each other. They get the best out of what they're going for. Great movies.
What was I? Yeah, it's kind of I'm kind of crazy like looking back on it that like we spent like 4 hours watching Eureka together, because it's such like a heavy, depressing movie.
That's a dense watch.
One of the best movies I've ever seen, for sure, but it is very heavy.
Yeah. And I mean, Koji Yakusho too, great actor, fantastic actor. What else? We've seen lots of his stuff, even not together too, like Labyrinth of Cinema. I know Jack.
Yeah. Absolutely love that movie.
Vaughn, we've seen Picnic together.
Yeah,
which,
great movie.
Again, like, I mean, not to just stay on this train too long, but like what happened with me is I discovered Asano through Ichi as well as other great actors, and from them, looking at their filmography, and it can be as simple as just looking at the poster and being like, that looks really like, something I just haven't seen before. And I feel like I got introduced to every big Japanese director that there is. And like, so I'm not just thankful for the films that have him in them, but I'm thankful for like, he's introduced all these different directors to me that have ended up having kind of like a lot of meaning to my life. I mean,
100%.
Whether it's like I had a rough day and I just need to watch this movie, or I want to share something fun with friends, like there's a wide array of cinema within his filmography.
That's true. He is a great just introduction to so many things because he's so prolific and has worked with so many amazing filmmakers. Like, yeah, just going through his filmography is quite a journey on its own. And you get so much variety as well. He's in so many different things. I mean, we were just talking about Electric Dragon, and then you go immediately to like Helpless and Sad Vacation, which are like complete opposites in terms of the vibe there.
Yeah,
well, and then you got Redline too.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
Oh,
Redline is fantastic.
I was gonna say we need to open up the anime conversation because we've seen quite a few of those together in some regards, and there's some bangers in there. Like the Patlabor movies, we went through a couple of those ones. Like, big fan of mecha movies in general, but the Patlabor stuff does something completely different within that sandbox.
Those are fantastic. What else have we seen? I know I watched Goku Midnight Eye, right? That's a good one.
Yes, yeah, that was quite a good one. Dead Leaves, like that really frantic. I can't even, it's very difficult to describe that movie. Imashi's movie, his animation style is very singular, very I don't know, love it or hate it, Marmite of the animation industry, I don't know, but he has very blocky, especially in Dead Leaves, very frantic, blocky experimental designs. Very aggressive,
it's super unique, like just like as weird as you can get with like sci-fi and kind of like
very
that
geometric and like a very interesting color theory behind it all. But Dead Leaves is one that's like, again, like 55 minutes breakneck speed, never takes his foot off the gas, and is just an absolute tour de force of animation.
Yeah, also like
similar.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's just similar to Redline in that some of the frantic sequences within Redline definitely have that Dead Leaves energy.
Absolutely.
Oh man, I forgot that Ben, we watched Violence Voyager together, which not quite like an anime, but
that's a movie. That's a nightmare of a movie.
It really is. It's like one that I'm still not sure if I like it, but like I can certainly appreciate how just dedicated it is to like its bizarreness, I suppose.
Like that Gekimation animation style is something that is just kind of like nothing else whatsoever. There's not even that many films that fall into that category. There's like an otherworldly quality to that film. Absolutely incredible. And what's the other one, Ben? Voyager. Is it Burning Buddha?
Burning Buddha Man.
Yeah.
Equally, not as disturbing maybe, but like it's just bizarre. I think Violence Voyager is a prime example of like if someone stumbled upon that. We briefly mentioned guinea pig films earlier. If someone just like found
someone's calling the police, they're calling the police and the FBI. Your house is getting like swatted that night if you rent that movie.
It's true.
And like to paint the picture for everyone listening, if you don't know, the animation, the style, whatever you want to call it, is like cardboard cutouts. Very detailed, like they're awesome, but like that's what it is. And then he adds like real goop and stuff to them sometimes, and you wouldn't think that you would have a visceral reaction to that, but like I couldn't help. It's gross. It's
very graphic. In my review of it, I said it's like the in between South Park and a Francisco Goya painting, which is that famous Saturn devouring his son. Like it's a good way to describe it. Interesting design, but very graphic, very brutal, a very singular entry into the world of animation, or Gekimation as it's been coined.
Well, I'm noticing a trend with myself. I think however much a movie can like baffle me, my star count might go up.
Yeah.
Because there were scenes during Violence Voyager, and I think we watch partied that with a couple other people, Vaughn, and like
I think so, yeah.
I was just like, this is unbelievable what we are witnessing right now.
It really is.
I just couldn't believe anything, and it becomes weirdly moving coming of age, like overcoming the obstacles type of story. So I'm like, oh man, yeah, check that out. I mean, again, I feel like we're trying to like show off some deep cuts or some indie films or just fun things. Like that again is a movie you'll watch it, and even if you hated it, you'll probably recommend it to other people just because there's nothing else like it.
That's very true. There is nothing else like it. Absolutely.
And that's another one with a tight runtime too, so you're not like wasting time.
There's only so much you can do with that animation style, I think. It has its limitations.
Before you get a restraining order slapped on yourself, I fear. But yeah, to like dig up some other like underground gems we've watched. Like we're all big fans of like tokusatsu Super Sentai stuff.
Yeah.
And was it last year we had like a little movie marathon together? Last March it was. Yeah. And Gokeija Gosija Super Sentai 199 Hero Great Battle. Possibly the movie to end all movies. Never seen anything like it. I've seen quite a lot of like the Kamen Rider stuff and that sort of style, but that movie is like an anniversary film for a show and heroes. I had no familiarity with it, and we were just completely baffled and like sat in awe and had so much fun with that film. Oh man, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, because I think it's like I think it's a crossover film between multiple franchises and like combines all these different things. So it's like Power Rangers on steroids, where you've got literally like hundreds of different characters that are all like squaring off against each other. They all have different powers. It's crazy.
My review is just like stream of consciousness notes trying to keep up with the lore of the movie, and there is at some point you just have to tap out and you just have to let it wash over you and enjoy the action choreography and the zany things that happen and new characters being introduced and they go to space and then there's villain design. Oh, incredible stuff. That's the sort of stuff I really gravitate towards these days. Is just I want to be baffled and entertained in equal measures.
Well, especially with the tokusatsu stuff, it feels like the possibilities are endless, you know, like any given thing you watch could go in absolutely any direction, and you just kind of go, that makes sense. Let's go for it. Why not?
And Anno's Shin Kamen Rider, we watched together, Vaughn. I think either you rewatched it or I rewatched it. We watched that together, and that is such a lovely love letter to Kamen Rider and the tokusatsu genre in general. Like that movie is an absolute blast.
Yeah, I think
that movie is everything I want from like a tokusatsu film.
Yeah, I think all of those Shin movies do a really good job of like introducing people to this genre or like this character or whatever, and I think they really do a good job of kind of inviting you to then go and watch the rest of it and check out the other stuff. Because certainly I watched Shin Kamen Rider and didn't really know anything about like the wider Kamen Rider universe or franchise, and after seeing that, and especially because it ends with like that compilation of a bunch of the older classic stuff that really inspired him to make it, and it was like, oh, I should go back and watch, and now I've watched tons of those old Kamen Rider specials and I just love them. They're so much fun.
So good, so fucking good.
Amazing. I mean, you put like a dude in a bug suit on a motorcycle.
It's true.
Most of the time.
I think I've shown my brother and my dad on separate occasions the opening 5 minutes of that movie to try and sell them on the idea, because he's just like crushing dudes and kicking them through trees and blood is splatting everywhere, and it's so different from the Kamen Rider that came before. It's fantastic.
It's that movie does have an amazing first 5 minutes. It really hooks you.
Let's see. Should we've been at almost an hour. Should we do like a quick, like, just name off a few movies that we love, that people should check out?
Yeah, let's get some good ones.
I
mean, The Crazy Family, we all watched that together last year as part of that Birthday Mind Melter.
Movie,
that's another Garaguri Ichi movie. That one absolutely floored me. Love that one.
Amazing movie. 100% agree.
Yeah, that
buy the
Third
Window
one.
Films Blu-ray.
Sponsored.
Not sponsored,
Not
but
sponsored.
do it anyways. I'm gonna shout out Hairpin Circus.
Yes!
Oh man, really
one
good.
time,
Yeah.
and that movie is awesome.
That is vibe central.
Jazz,
Just
cars,
hot jazz and fast
vibes.
cars, like dark,
Yes.
slick roads. Oh man, that's so
Tokyo
good.
at like nighttime too.
Yeah, like
it's great.
70s jazz fusion. It's sexy. It's slick. Man, that movie rules.
There's a sequence at the end of that movie where there's just like cars like drifting along like this snowy road that's just like one of the greatest things. It's so good, like the way it's shot and filmed and everything. Really, really cool movie. I don't even know how you stumbled across that one, Ben.
Again, just
Honestly,
the power of the internet.
I was just trying to find movies. I'm like, what's some fun stuff we could watch together?
Yeah.
And then at the time, at least close to that time, I think like the new Fast and Furious was coming out, and I was like, I want to watch some car movies
Oh, yeah.
from Japan.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I was just diving through Letterboxd looking for stuff. And I found that cover, and I saw the title. I'm like, Hairpin Circus, what is this? And it had like 200 views. And once I found it, I'm like, this is like the coolest thing I've ever
So
seen.
cool.
How has no one else seen this movie?
But Ben, it isn't the
Yeah,
coolest
it's
thing you've
great.
ever seen, because the coolest thing you've ever seen you watched with me, and you introduced it to me, and it's Toyota's Shiver from 2021.
Oh my God,
Man.
The Taiko Performing Arts Ensemble, wordless, transcendental music masterpiece that I
incredible
would
film.
recommend to anyone and everyone. It's quite difficult to get your hands on, but it's so worth watching. Like, just there's nothing like it. It is absolutely a very powerful entry into cinema as an art form. Just one of the best things ever.
I think Ben's made it his like personal life mission to make everyone he
To get
meets watch
everyone.
that movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, when I first watched that, and I'm trying to think, I need to look at the film activity now, because I think the
your
first time I
your
watched
rewatch
it was
is
with
must
you.
go
One
crazy.
out of 25
might-
watches or whatever.
It might have been actually,
There were a
yeah.
lot. Let's see.
But again, that was
show
one-
my activity.
That was one that you brought to the table, and something I would never have stumbled upon myself, even though I'd seen some other Toyota stuff. It was just like a completely like off the cuff stuff.
So the first time I watched was with Cody, and then
Yeah,
with you
yeah.
and Rainer, and
Yeah.
then with you, Vaughn, and I think maybe Cody again, or maybe Rainer again. I definitely watched it a lot.
It's
That
good.
movie, yeah. I mean, I think Toyota in general is an awesome filmmaker. I think
Nine
he's
Souls,
one that
another
has
one we can shout out.
Yeah.
We watched together.
Nine Souls, Blue Spring,
Mm-hmm.
Hanging Garden. These are all great movies, but Shiver is like, you know, Toyota's a great director, but you didn't know he had that in him. Like, it's still different than what he usually does, and it is just, it's astonishing. The first time I watched it, the reason I had to show all of you is because it's not often like we have a truly visceral experience while watching a film.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's no narrative. This is just like humans performing their craft, and it's beautifully captured. And I just goosebumps throughout the movie. I was like, this is insane. Like, how are these people playing this music? How are they creating these sounds? How is he directing them in this sense? It just blew my mind. I think about that movie all the time.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And also like another one that's, I think it's only about an hour, right? Pretty short. Or no, it's 90 minutes. Okay.
Maybe about 90, yeah. But again, just one of those.
I guess it
that you
just feels
soak
that short
into.
because it just flows so
it's
smoothly.
just seamless. The way it plays with rhythm and timbre, like just dynamic range. Genuinely one of the best things ever.
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out Angaku, Our Sound, as well.
Oh,
Yes.
Another
Yeah.
great one. Yeah, we watched that one. I think all of us were watching that one.
I think
together
I
and
fell
just,
asleep.
like,
I think I went.
Oh, maybe you fell
again,
asleep at
time
that point.
differences.
Yeah, that was during a party for all of us.
Yeah, that was another one of those 24-hour mind melter party marathons, and I've got to tap out at some point, I'm afraid. But yeah, I went back and revisited, watched it for the first time because of that, and yeah, absolutely great. Just a beautiful movie.
Another one that I didn't have any expectations or even know what it was going into it, and then just like was totally blown away. Like it's also such a unique style for like Japanese animation. It looks very different from most other anime that you would see, but it's like it's all hand drawn, all like just like so much like love is poured into it, and it's just like so expressive and cool. And yeah, I really fell in love with that one as soon as I saw it.
Another one from one of those marathons was The Golden Bat. That sort of like
That's awesome.
Yes.
vintage Sonny Chiba superhero sci-fi movie. That one is so much fun, and I'm surprised it doesn't have like quite a wider following, because it feels not necessarily influential, but it feels like what it's doing so well in terms of that like pulpy comic book stylings, like Saturday morning cereal.
Yeah, 100% agree.
One that Ben and I watched together a while ago, and then I know you watched recently, Jack, is Crime Hunter: Bullets of Rage, which is like the original V Cinema movie. So cool. It's just like a tight like 60 minutes of like pure action and just like fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people feel like action movies can drag sometimes with the human component. That movie's like, who needs a human component?
Yeah, let's just go. Let's just go.
Action, and when there's not action, it's just like dudes and girls being cool. Like,
yeah, that's all you need. That's all you
cool.
need.
Yeah,
as Jean-Luc Godard said it best, all you need for a good movie is a gun and a girl. That's it.
Pretty much. This is the last one I'll shout out for now, but or for this podcast, but I do have to say Mechanical Violator, like
of course, yeah,
is another like, it's just 80 minutes straight into your veins of pure tokusatsu action, badassery, super overly dramatic. It's about like evil versus good. It's everything I want. It maybe it's cheesy, but it's presented with such heart, and it tries to be so cool, and I just love every second of it.
It's so good. I mean, like the hero is this like brutal black like Terminator guy, and he goes to take down Jesus Town, which has become like a fascist village of like evil. It's so great. Really love that one. One of my favorite directors as well. Just like all of his movies are so great.
Another another step printed plug. We covered that on Throwdown and Action Cinema podcast.
That's true.
Absolute banger.
Hell yeah.
So damn good. Trying to pick one to end on. This is tough. Ooh.
Well, while you think, I'll shout one out that Ben and I watched, which is Battle Heater, which definitely tests the limits of like insanity on film. It's just like a total spiral of just like what the fuck is going on. But I came out of it like, this is kind of amazing.
Thing that
I don't think I could either.
But it's great.
I think a heater tries to like eat a punk high school band during a concert, I believe happens at some point.
What?
Yeah. Jack, that is a very you movie. Like, if you check it out, you will love that. It's just weird, but it's not like overly weird. It's just bizarre. I don't know. It's great.
And I'll end on a human we no longer endorse, but damn did he make some good movies. Sinsono's Why Don't You Play in Hell, which is a wonderful tribute to just the art of filmmaking, blended with Yakuza stylings, some Bruceploitation stuff thrown in for good measure, and it's just an absolute riot. Just movie making as action cinema, just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal film. I cannot deny that for sure.
I'm in the same boat. That was maybe the second or third movie I had seen from him after his crazier stuff, if I'm being honest. But like, that was the one where I'm like, if he could rein in his ideas sometimes, just like
and just
whatever,
shoot from the
like
hip.
that. That's great stuff. Like, it really is a wonderful tribute to everything that we love about movies, and
for sure.
Specifically Japanese film too. Like,
it's
just the
very
Yakuza,
much
the action.
It's a legacy piece. It's it's so good. Cool.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me for a little chat about some of our favorite Japanese movies. This was a very good time.
This was a pleasure. It was a lovely trip down memory lane. Like, I genuinely didn't realize how involved you two were in like my Japanese cinema watching until today. Like, it's been really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started Japanuary, you guys were there from the start, and we became such great friends since then. And it's honestly just really fun to see all the stuff we've watched. And like we said at the beginning, every kind of cinema that exists, we like tried to venture into it in Japanese cinema, and It's been wild, sometimes gross, sometimes fun, sometimes
bad.
It put us in a coma, you know.
I'm sure
like,
I'm sure there's some bad ones we didn't highlight, but that's not what this podcast is for.
True. That's very true.
I wouldn't trade any of those moments.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's all, well, horsewoman dog has its moments, but you know.
That's one moment I might trade.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you for watching. Be sure to head on over to stepprinted.com if that's not where you came from. If you want, you can listen to Jack and I on Throwdown. We've covered several Japanese action movies. You can also listen to Ben and Jack on Adventures Through Asian Cinema, which, as we discussed, they've discussed some of the films we talked about today, so in more depth. So thank you very much for watching, and catch you next time.